So as well known as Gene Hackman was, neighbors tell us that he and his wife led intensely private lives here in Santa Fe, their longtime home. And while we've been learning more about this case, there is still so much we don't know.
Breaking news, you're looking at video of one of the last times Oscar winner Gene Hackman, a known recluse in recent years, was seen in public.
Here in Santa Fe, Sheriff's Department officials here working behind me have yet another high-profile case on their hands. Aaron, you and I covered at length the Alec Baldwin case, that fatal shooting on the set of the movie Rust. This is the same investigative team that worked that case. That initial findings note no external trauma to either individual. They say that carbon monoxide toxicology reports have been requested. Finally, as sheriff's officials gather information, it's worth pointing out that this could take weeks or months before we know exactly what the cause of is. That's because these medical examiner cases often take time in order to get to the root cause of these.
But they've clearly been for several days, and I'm saying days plural, in order to get that kind of mummification. One of the ways of figuring this out, obviously, is from the scene investigation to find out when did they last pick up the mail, when did they last check in with relatives, phone calls, those kind of things, because people generally will communicate with others during the course of their time.
Was a dog who was alive in the house and a dog also that belonged to them who was outside the house.
Right, but the door being ajar means, what Judy describes, which is they could have been there 10 days or 2 weeks, meant that the dogs could have had access to come in and out of that doorway. They might have had access to food and to water.
As Hollywood gets ready to honor its best at the Academy Awards this weekend, there are still unanswered questions about the of two-time Oscar winner Gene Hackman and his wife. The couple was found this week in their New Mexico home. On Friday, investigators ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning and revealed other clues that may lead them to determine what did happen.
First, there's the medical crisis theory. Hackman was 95. Betsy was 65. Could one of them have suffered a sudden emergency, leaving the other completely helpless? If Betsy had collapsed first, was Hackman simply unable to call for help? Or, if Hackman was the first to go, did Betsy spiral into shock and confusion, taking too many pills, falling victim to stress, grief, or even starvation? It sounds plausible, but it doesn't explain everything.
Much of the investigation is happening just up this road behind gates and a guard in an affluent neighborhood where homes are separated by acres of land. That's where Hackman and his wife chose to live, decidedly secluded.
Especially the state of the bodies or the bizarre details at the scene. Then there's the environmental factor. The carbon monoxide theory may have been ruled out. But what if something else was poisoning them slowly? Mold? A hidden gas leak that went undetected, some kind of chemical exposure they never saw coming. If this theory holds weight, it could explain why they were found in separate rooms, struggling with symptoms before succumbing. But again, no proof yet, and no answers about why only one of their dogs was affected.
Due to the unusual circumstances of two decedents in the residence, there was a concern for scene safety. Santa Fe City fire personnel and the New Mexico Gas Company were requested to the scene to test for carbon monoxide or other foreign elements. The scene was deemed safe, and approximately 9:30 p.m., a search warrant was issued and executed on the residence.
Now let's talk about the theory people are scared to say out loud. Foul play. No forced entry. No obvious signs of a struggle. But what if that's exactly the point? What if this wasn't some random break-in, but something more personal? Someone they knew. Someone who had a key, or at least knew how to get inside. The open door could be a sign of panic, or a calculated move to send a message. And then, the darkest possibility, a murder-suicide. It's hard to imagine. Hackman and Betsy were deeply private, but by all accounts, they were happy together. Still, was there something happening behind closed doors? A secret no one knew about? If one of them was struggling with illness or despair, could it have led to an unthinkable act? At this point, all we have are theories, speculation, and a growing list of questions that demand answers.
From this search warrant, there were 2 green in color cell phones, 2 bottles of medication, 1 bottle of over-the-counter Tylenol, my request medical records, and a 2025 monthly planner, calendar. Those items were secured from the residence for evidentiary purposes.
Because something about this case, something, just doesn't feel right. The shock of Gene Hackman's death sent ripples through Hollywood and beyond. The man was a legend, a powerhouse on screen, and a deeply respected figure off it. So when news broke about his passing, tributes flooded in. Clint Eastwood, a longtime friend and collaborator, didn't hold back. He called Hackman not just one of the most talented actors he'd ever worked with, but a dear friend. And coming from Eastwood, that means something.
It's weird because I knew a lot of them, so they weren't intimidating. Meeting Gene Hackman the first time, was like, but then finding out he was so funny, that was a great thing. You know, when I saw him, he did that speech in Birdcage where he just says that thing about, and the leaves. And at that point, you just slowly nod off. But he did it so, it's a hard thing to make boring hysterical. And he did it.
Yeah.
And he did it perfectly, He had...
Morgan Freeman also weighed in, calling Hackman one of the finest actors he had ever had the privilege of working with. And honestly, that's the truth. Hackman wasn't just an actor. He was a force, a presence, someone who could command a scene without even saying a word. But while Hollywood grieved, the internet did what the internet does, started digging. Some fans brought up past interviews where Hackman spoke about his fear of death. Was it just a personal reflection, or was there something more to it? Speculation is running wild. Some people are convinced something sinister happened. Others think it was simply a tragic ending to a long life. But one thing's for sure, this story isn't going away anytime soon.
What was it like being on the set with Gene Hackman?
Well, Gene, people ask all the time, who's the best actor, who's the biggest star, who's the blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. The line's long for the great actors I've been able to work with, really is. But I would say probably Gene was the best actor that I'd ever worked with.
Right now, this case is a tangled mess of unanswered questions. Investigators are still combing through phone data, waiting on toxicology results, and looking into any possible environmental factors that could explain what happened. But so far, no clear answers. And that's what makes this whole thing so unsettling. A Hollywood legend, gone. His wife, gone. No witnesses. No obvious cause. Just a house full of eerie details that refuse to add up. The mystery surrounding Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's deaths is only getting deeper. And until investigators find something definitive, the world is left wondering, what really happened inside that quiet Santa Fe mansion? Was it a tragic medical crisis? A hidden environmental danger? Or is there something far more chilling at play? What do you think happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Something is seriously off about this whole situation. Gene Hackman, Hollywood royalty, a legend, gone. And not just gone. Found lifeless in his own home. But that's not even the most shocking part. The details trickling out from Santa Fe are chilling. Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were found in their mansion under circumstances that don't quite add up. The authorities are being careful with their words, but there's something they aren't saying outright. And that silence, that's making people ask even more questions. What happened inside that house? Why is there talk of violent evidence at the scene? And if this wasn't just a tragic accident, then who could possibly be responsible? I have it on good authority that investigators are starting to piece together some unsettling clues. And let me just tell you, once you hear what they found, you won't look at this case the same way again. Hang on, because this one is going to leave you with more questions than answers. This is where things start to get really unsettling. Gene Hackman, 95 years old, and his wife Betsy, 65. Both found lifeless in their Santa Fe mansion. But here's the part that raises immediate red flags. They weren't even in the same room. The discovery itself was pure chance. Two maintenance workers showed up for what should have been a routine visit. Nothing out of the ordinary. But instead of a quiet, empty house, they walked into something straight out of a nightmare. The front door, wide open, and if you know anything about Hackman and Betsy, you know they were intensely private. That door being open like that, it didn't make sense. Then came the real shock. Hackman was lying near the kitchen, his cane and sunglasses nearby, like he had just been moving through the house before something stopped him cold. And Betsy, found in the bathroom, prescription pills scattered everywhere, a space heater knocked over beside her, and then the strangest detail yet. One of their dogs, dead inside a crate, but the other two, completely fine, wandering the property like nothing had happened. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just a tragic scene, it was a puzzle. And the more you look at it, the more the pieces refuse to fit. At first, authorities thought they had a straightforward explanation: carbon monoxide poisoning. The overturned space heater in the bathroom made it an easy assumption. A tragic